You can't do a good election without having a clean electoral roll. Your name must be there if you want it to be there. And if you don't want your name to be there, that's your choice. If you want your name to be there, your name should be there. And if your name isn't there, then and you want it to be there, then it's not a perfect role. Now, until you don't aim for perfection in your role, you can't aim for perfection in a good election. It's not possible. So what we did was, apart from everything else, we decided that when I joined the commission, we took it to the commission that nobody seemed to want our little election cards. You lost your driving license, you chased the system. You lost your passport, you chased the system. We chased you with the election card, you didn't want it. Then we soon found out why we wanted. They said make it pocket friendly, so we made it pocket friendly, small. Then people wanted it as a form of identification, so we wrote to the chief secretaries and said make it a form of identification. So 2 management practices: reduce the size, ask the chief secretaries, make it a form of identification, and then overnight, everybody wanted our card. Otherwise, 582 million cards could not be distributed by April of 2009. And before I left, the commission took a view that by the end of this year, we would equip 100%. But on the 1st of January every year, we make this effort. We decided that we were going to now get booth capturing and that kind of criminal behavior just eliminated from our scene. So the photograph comes on the card, the photograph also comes onto the electoral roll. So a presiding officer only has to see your face, the card, the pictures everywhere, and then it's very difficult to booth capture. But we also make various other measures to see that a booth can no longer be captured. We decided that if there was any attempt of booth capturing, that was reported to us. And now remember, we have that system of communication, so we get to know very rapidly that election will be put aside. I had made it clear that if there was even the slightest aroma is not the right word, the slightest smell of communal tension, we would not do the election. We would just postpone it and postpone it and postpone it until the playing field had been completely leveled. And such is the regard, or as Mrs. Sushma Swaraj, quoting Mr. Badal, said at the Diamond Jubilee at Vigyan Bhavan last year, that such is the fear of the Election Commission. She used the word fear, she and Mr. Badal, not me. I say regard of the Election Commission, that some of these things, some of these practices are behind us. One of our officers, like you, developed a simple system of how to capture as many names as possible of the electoral roll. What is it? Booth level officer, teacher or government servant. So you're a booth level officer and you are going to look after 1,200, 1,300, 1,400 people in your locality. You soon get to know who they are. You soon get to know who's become 18-year-old that year. You soon get to know who's died or somebody has moved out. So you have a database which is fairly exact. It's not as if all 1,800 are going to move out or 1,500 are going to move out in Bangalore even from this locality to that. So you have fairly good, and this comes to us from the stratagem of a booth level officer to whom we pay. We developed something that would be of interest to you. In the 2007 UP election, our officers, and I wish we could have more research students like you, to help us, because there's so much data. We began to hear from political parties who were saying us, कि हम वोट नहीं करने जा सकते, there's a problem here, we're not able to reach that polling station, people are coming in the way, upper castes are dominating, etc., etc. So we started doing an analytical study and found that yes, there were some villages, some tolas, some areas that had not voted for years. They were blanks. The computers were able to identify them. So we devised what was called vulnerability mapping, which has now come into our permanent landscape. What does vulnerability mapping mean? That an area of that tola in Bihar or in West Bengal, for some other reasons, different reasons in different parts of the country, are not voting. So let us make that possible. So I give you a simple example. There are 3 villages like that. The polling station is there. People have to come like that. And somewhere they are impeded. Sometimes they are impeded because it's a caste issue. Sometimes they are impeded because in the mountains the little bridge over the river has broken down, so they can't do 10 kilometers to come, and so on. So we analyzed all this. And in the case of UP, we simply did this, that while we let the polling station remain there, we put another one there. We called it an auxiliary booth. And so we created thousands of auxiliary booths. We also sent the message clearly that there have to be rules of good behavior. If there are no rules of good behavior being followed, you won't do the election. Now let me explain to you in political terms what it means not to do an election or to postpone an election. You are a candidate. You've suddenly mobilized 300 workers, 400 workers. You have to give them chai pani. They're not going to work for you otherwise. And you've got the whole momentum going, and you've got your own control room and so on and so forth. And suddenly I say, no jump, postpone. Now you don't know what to do with that workforce. You don't know how long I'm postponing it. Are you going to disband them? Are you going to give them chai pani indefinitely? Your momentum breaks. You can't afford it. It's very painful. And so, when in Visakhapatnam, somebody on his mobile phone sent us a 2-minute film clip. Because that's the other great advantage of a mobile phone. So we see a showroom. It's a textile showroom. And there are briefcases on the floor. And there's the polling, there's the register, the electoral register. And somebody is reading out the name, and money is going into those briefcases. For this locality, for this locality, for this locality. So we postponed the election. Once, twice. Until we were satisfied that we had reasonably sanitized the area. We took remedial measures, we transferred officers, and so on and so forth. But the fact is that in the end, it is a reasonably fair election. You might like to ask me some questions on electronic voting machines. I'll be happy to answer them. And any other questions that you want to ask me, please feel free to do this. But I'll just conclude by saying that we're a 3-man commission, or one day a 3-woman commission. But 3 is very helpful. Because one retires, but the good practices remain with the other 2. So you don't have to begin all over again, which tends to happen in government posts and so on. So there's a great advantage in 3. The second is that if I were to just do a broad management comparison between the 2004 general election, which was a very good election, and the 2009 election, which was so far considered to be the best election, and I have no doubt that 2014, when it happens, will be even better than 2009. One was that we have better communication. The second is that my method of addressing the anxieties of all the political parties, including the independents who have no party to back them, was also that when they said that they were worried about that polling station, then there I would either put central forces, or we have a very good observer mechanism, but we improved it by having micro observers. Now a micro observer is a government servant who's paid from government funds and not from the state funds. So the micro observer would sit in that booth for all 8 or 9 hours. And secondly, as I went around the country, I told all the district magistrates in my reviews that get me all the video cameras that you can. Couldn't understand why. But then I explained that I want, suppose you feel that that booth is vulnerable for you, there will be a video camera recording the proceedings the whole time. Now ask him, his battery will run out after 4 or 5 hours. Then what will happen if the polling is 10 hours? And he is not going to share his camera with that guy. So 2 people, 2 cameras. Instructions regarding battery management. I'm just giving you little management principles in this huge chain. If his battery runs out after 5 hours, then where am I for the next floor? Then the booth will be captured. Can't have it like that. So there would be mechanisms in place to take place of all the hours. And in some places which were particularly difficult, there'd be central forces, there'd be video cameras, there'd be digital cameras, there'd even be a micro observer. So with using these stratagems in order to be able to assuage the fears of the opposition, they would say that it was fair. And that, I think, that when you get very few complaints, and the final, I think, applause, as it were, was that when we celebrated our Diamond Jubilee in last year, in January of 25th, 2010, when we turned 60, a day before the Republic, in the Vigyan Bhavan Hall in Delhi. Many of you have seen the Vigyan Bhavan Hall. On the dais, we had the President of India, the Vice President of India, the Prime Minister, the Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition, the Leader of the two political formations, our three commissioners, and there were two mandatory ministers because the stamp had to be released and so on. More important was in the front row, we had a former Prime Minister, and we had the leaders of all the political opposition in the country. I had spoken to them personally. I said, this is a showcase of Indian democracy. Please come. So whoever I spoke to, cancelled their programs, changed them around, and I think most of them came, one or two incapacitated or something by ill health at that time, were not able to come. But the 35 counterparts of mine from other parts of the world who were in the audience remarked to me that they had never ever seen such a thing in their country. And many privately told me that they didn't think that they would in their tenures. So I think that was a testimony that in these 60 years, we have gradually become seen as more and more impartial, more and more effective. But there are still many, many things